My name is Brielle Kensington, and I'm 37. People love to say marriage is about compromise. Nobody warns you that sometimes it's about swallowing tiny humiliations until you forget the taste of your own pride. We had this monthly ritual, 4 couples, same Italian place, same corner table. The kind of tradition that makes you feel like your life is stable even when it isn't. Candlelight, cheap jokes, a bottle of red we always pretended we could taste notes in. It was supposed to be easy. I walked in that night already tired. Not just tired like long week. Tired like I'd been holding my breath for months and my body didn't remember how to let it out. My husband Caleb was in a good mood, the kind that looks charming to strangers and dangerous to the person who lives with it. His arm looped around my waist like a performance. He kissed my cheek like we were fine. We weren't. The table filled up fast. Nate and Alana slid in first, laughing about something that happened at their kids' soccer game. Marcus and Priya followed, still wearing their coats because they'd come straight from work. Jonah and Elise arrived last, apologizing, cheeks pink from the cold. 8 people, 4 couples. One shared illusion, that we all knew each other's lives. We ordered, we clinked glasses. We did the usual, how's work, how's life, dance. Caleb started early with the little comments. Brielle doesn't do spontaneous, he told the table when Jonah mentioned a last-minute weekend trip. If it isn't on her calendar, it doesn't exist. Everyone chuckled. I smiled because that's what you do when you're the punchline and you don't want to ruin the mood. Then, she's basically married to her laptop. More laughter, a few sympathetic looks. Alana's eyes flicked to mine for half a second, like she was silently asking, "Are you okay?" I lifted my glass. Someone has to pay the bills. Caleb grinned, like I'd just fed him a line he wanted. That was the thing about Caleb. He could turn any moment into a stage, and he always aimed the spotlight at me. By the time entrees came, he was a few drinks in and fully warmed up. Animated, loud, holding court. I'd heard versions of this for months. He'd call me boring in front of friends, then later, when it was just us, he'd say I was too sensitive. That he loved my stability, that he was just teasing. And if I pushed, if I tried to explain how it made me feel, he'd sigh like I was assigning him homework he never agreed to do. So I learned to let the moments pass. Until that night, Marcus was telling a story about his boss, something ridiculous, and everyone was laughing. Caleb leaned back, swirling his wine like he was in a movie. Then he looked at me, right at me, and said it like it was a cute observation. God, he sighed dramatically, I need a new wife. This one's broken. The words didn't echo in the restaurant. They didn't need to. The table went silent in a way that felt physical, like someone had sucked all the oxygen out from between us. Someone coughed. Someone's fork scraped against a plate too loudly. Elise's smile collapsed so fast it looked painful. Caleb chuckled, waiting for the laughter that usually saved him. It didn't come. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Not anger at first. Something worse. That cold, humiliating clarity where you realize everybody just watched you get degraded and nobody knows what to do with their hands. Caleb lifted his brows at me like, come on, play along. And that's when something clicked. Not a scream, not a dramatic slap, just the quiet snap of a thread that had been stretched too long. I wasn't furniture, I wasn't a defective appliance, and I wasn't going to sit there while the man who vowed to love me tried to entertain a room by shrinking me. I folded my napkin slowly. My hands didn't shake, which surprised me. I set it down like I was ending a meeting, not a marriage. Then I stood. Caleb blinked. Babe. I looked at him, calm enough to scare myself. You're single now, I said. My voice was steady, almost gentle. So that's solved. His face did this quick, confused reset, like he couldn't find the script. Wait, what? He laughed, too loud. Brielle, it was a joke. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't beg him to understand my pain because I'd spent months doing that and it never mattered. I just turned and walked away. Behind me, chairs shifted. Someone whispered my name. Alana, I think. Jonah said, Caleb, man, in a tone that wasn't joking anymore. Caleb called after me, louder. Where are you going? Brielle. I kept walking. The air outside felt sharper, colder, cleaner. Like my lungs finally had room, my heart hammered, but it wasn't panic. It was adrenaline, the kind your body releases when it finally chooses you. I got into my car. My phone lit up instantly. Caleb calling. Decline. Again, decline. A text popped up. Seriously? You're embarrassing me. That one almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly Caleb. The injury wasn't what he'd said. The injury was that I stopped smiling through it. I drove home on autopilot. The house looked exactly the same. Porch light on, wreath still hanging slightly crooked because Caleb promised he'd fix it and never did. I didn't sit down. If I sat down, I might start bargaining with myself. I might start doing that thing women are trained to do: minimize, rationalize, swallow. So I moved. I packed a bag, laptop, charger, clothes, underwear, toiletries, my passport, my work folder, the file with the deed and mortgage paperwork, because I'm the kind of woman who keeps her life in labeled folders. Caleb's voice was still pinging my phone from the other room. Calls, texts, voicemails stacking like a tower. I checked into a hotel 15 minutes away. I didn't choose it because it was nice. I chose it because it was quiet and anonymous and it had a deadbolt. I turned my phone off. And for the first time in months, I slept without bracing for the next insult disguised as humor. Morning came like a new reality. I turned my phone on long enough to see the chaos. Missed calls, dozens, voicemails, messages that swung wildly between rage and pleading. You're overreacting. Come home. This is insane. Answer me. Brielle, please. Not one message said, I'm sorry. Not one. I deleted them, then I blocked his number. It felt brutal. It also felt clean. I called a lawyer next, someone I'd met through a colleague, a woman with a voice like polished stone. She asked, do you have kids? No. Property? The house is in my name. Bought it before we got married. Separate accounts? Yes. There was a pause, like she was measuring how fast my life could be cut loose. What happened? She asked. I stared at the hotel wall, the bland painting of a sailboat that looked like it had never known a storm. He's been disrespecting me in public for months, I said. Last night he called me broken, in front of 8 people, and he meant it. Are you sure you want to file? She asked. I didn't hesitate. I've never been more sure of anything. 2 days later, Caleb got served at his job. And that's when the calls started again. Because blocking Caleb didn't block the rest of his world. A number I didn't recognize flashed on my screen. I answered once to see who it was. Brielle, a man demanded, what the hell is wrong with you? Dylan, Caleb's brother. Loud, aggressive, always convinced he was the appointed referee of everyone else's life. Hi, Dylan, I said, tired already. You humiliated Caleb, he snapped. You just walked out like some drama queen, over a joke. It wasn't a joke, I said. It was a joke, he insisted, like repetition could rewrite reality. Caleb's devastated. Mom is losing her mind. You need to fix this. I'm not fixing what I didn't break, I said, and ended the call. Next number, Caleb's mother. She didn't even say hello. Marriage is hard work, she began. You don't just give up because feelings got hurt. I swallowed a bitter laugh. My feelings didn't get hurt. Your son called me broken and useless in front of our friends. He didn't mean it, she said quickly. He was venting. He's been venting in front of people for months, I replied, and every time I told him it hurt, he told me I was overreacting. Her voice sharpened. You're being childish. I blocked her mid-sentence. Then, because Caleb's family didn't know the meaning of boundaries, messages started coming from strangers. Friends of friends. People I'd met once at a barbecue. He misses you. Everyone makes mistakes. It was just a bad joke. You're throwing away 5 years over nothing. I blocked them all, one by one, like swatting mosquitoes that thought my peace was public property. My lawyer called. He's contesting the divorce. I let out a slow breath. Of course he is. He's claiming there are no grounds, she continued, that you abandoned the marriage over a harmless comment. Get statements, I said instantly, from the people at dinner. Exactly, she replied, if they'll cooperate. So I texted the other couples. My hands hovered for a moment before I hit send. Not because I was embarrassed, because asking for help always feels like admitting you should have asked sooner. But the replies came fast. Nate, yes, that was brutal. We've been uncomfortable with how he talks to you for a while. Priya, absolutely. I'll tell the truth. He crossed a line. Elise, Brielle, we've wanted to say something for months. You're not crazy. We'll back you up. I stared at the screen until my eyes stung. Not because it fixed anything, because it confirmed something I'd been afraid of. Everyone saw it. They just assumed I was accepting it. And the scariest part? Caleb probably assumed that too, because I always had, until now. The first thing I noticed after I walked out wasn't loneliness. It was how quiet my brain became when no one was narrating my flaws like they were party tricks. A week passed, then another. I moved into a corporate apartment, month to month, beige furniture, a couch that looked like it had never loved anyone. It wasn't home, but it was safe. It was mine for now. And in the stillness, something embarrassing happened. I started sleeping through the night. Caleb didn't. Or at least he wanted the world to believe he didn't. Random numbers kept popping up like weeds. She's really sorry. He's crying nonstop. You're being so cold. Just talk to him. It was always just talk. Like talking could unsay a year of public humiliation and private blame. Like my dignity was a misunderstanding to be clarified, not a boundary to be enforced. I blocked every number the way you lock doors at night, without guilt, without apology. My lawyer called again. He filed a formal response, still claiming you're overreacting, still claiming harmless joke. I stared out the apartment window at the parking lot. People loading groceries into trunks, ordinary lives moving like nothing had exploded. He can claim whatever he wants, I said. We have witnesses. Yes, she replied. And I want you to start documenting everything from this point forward. Every call, every text, every attempt to contact you, especially if he escalates. I almost laughed. Escalates? There was a pause. Brielle, she said gently, men like him don't like losing control, and he just lost it publicly. That night I learned what she meant. I stopped for gas after work. Routine. I tapped my card, waited for the beep. Declined. I tried again. Declined. The screen flashed a polite message that felt like a slap. Please see cashier. Inside, the cashier lifted her brows like I was trying to buy the gas station itself on fraud. My card's acting up, I said, calm. Still calm. I was proud of how calm I stayed. I stepped outside, called the bank, paced between the pump and my car, like a woman whose life had suddenly become a crime scene. After 5 minutes on hold, a representative finally answered. Ma'am, your account has been temporarily frozen due to a fraud alert. A fraud alert? I repeated carefully. On my account? Yes, we received a report expressing concern that you may be making erratic purchases and that your identity may be compromised. My stomach dropped. Who filed that report? There was a beat. It appears to have been reported by someone identifying themselves as your husband. My hand tightened around the phone so hard my knuckles went white. He is not on this account, I said slowly. He has never been on this account. The representative sounded apologetic in that robotic, policy-trained way. He provided your social security number and several personal identifiers. It was deemed credible enough to trigger a temporary freeze for your protection. For my protection, I echoed, and the words tasted like rust. The representative continued, you can resolve this by coming into a branch with identification. I ended the call with a thank you I didn't mean and sat in my car, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. Caleb didn't just want me to talk. He wanted me off balance, embarrassed, scrambling. He wanted me reminded in 1,000 small ways that he still had access to parts of my life. And the cruelest part? He didn't even have to hack anything. He just had to be believable. 3 hours later, I stood in a branch office under fluorescent lights that made everyone look guilty. I handed over my ID, my divorce filing documentation, proof of my address, proof of my existence. The manager, an older man with tired eyes, leaned in like he'd seen this story before. Ma'am, we'll note that your husband has zero authorization. We'll also add additional security measures. This is harassment, I said quietly. He nodded. I agree. We'll document it thoroughly. I walked out with my account restored and my stomach still twisted. I forwarded the bank documentation to my lawyer immediately. She replied within minutes. This is good evidence. Keep everything. Good evidence. What a strange thing to be grateful for. A few days later, I drove to the house. My house. I need to be clear about that, because the words mattered in court, and they mattered in my bones. I bought it 2 years before Caleb and I even met. Deed in my name, mortgage in my name, taxes and insurance, mine. But marriage does something weird to language. People start saying our like it's a spell. They start believing vows transfer ownership. I didn't go to fight. I didn't go to argue. I went for clothes. More work stuff. A few boxes I hadn't had time to pack on that first night when my hands were still steady. I stepped onto the porch and slid my key in. Turned it. Nothing. I tried again, a little harder. The lock didn't even give me the courtesy of pretending. For a few seconds, I just stood there, staring at the door like it had betrayed me. Then I laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. He changed the locks. On my house. I called my lawyer from the porch. She didn't even sound surprised. He changed the locks on a property solely in your name, she repeated, like she was confirming a math equation. Yes. Okay, she said. Do not force entry. I'm calling the police. We'll get an incident report, and you'll get access today. I sat on the steps and waited. A neighbor across the street pretended not to watch, but I could feel eyes behind curtains. That's how shame spreads. quietly, through other people's curiosity. 2 officers arrived, one tall, one shorter, both with that exhausted professional calm of people who have seen too many couples burn down a life together. They knocked. No answer. They knocked again. Finally, the door opened. Caleb stood there like he'd been waiting for a photo opportunity, hair styled, jaw tight, eyes already wet like he could summon tears on command. "What is this?" he demanded, staring past the officers to me. "Brielle, seriously?" The taller officer spoke first. "Ma'am, this gentleman owns this property." He paused, corrected himself with a glance at the paperwork. "Sorry, this woman owns this property. You need to allow her access." Caleb's expression flickered. "We're married," he snapped. "This is my house, too." The shorter officer asked, tired but firm, "Sir, do you own the house?" Caleb hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw the truth. He wasn't used to anyone asking him to prove his entitlement. "Well, no," he said, like it was a technicality. "Then you can't change the locks and keep her out," the officer replied. "Let her in." Caleb stepped aside with a glare that could have curdled milk. I walked in. The air inside hit me first. The smell of our old detergent, the faint citrus candle I used to light when I wanted the house to feel warm. The living room looked almost the same, but wrong in subtle ways. A throw blanket gone, a picture frame turned slightly, like someone had been rearranging my life to fit their storyline. Then I saw the garage. My things were in black garbage bags. Not boxes, not neatly stacked. Garbage bags, tied tight, lined up like trash, confirming my disposal. I stood there for a moment, throat tightening. Caleb came up behind me. "You left," he said, voice shaking. "You abandoned me." I turned slowly. "What was I supposed to do?" I asked, calm again, because anger would give him what he wanted. "Sit there and let you call me broken in front of people?" "It was a joke," he insisted, softer now. "You always take things so seriously." The tall officer cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, we'll help you document and retrieve what you need." Caleb's face contorted like he couldn't believe the universe wasn't siding with him. "So you're just taking her side?" The shorter officer said, flat, "We're taking the side of property law." I almost smiled. Almost. The officers took photos. I took photos. My phone became a weapon in the quietest way. Evidence, timestamps, reality preserved. As I loaded bags into my trunk, Caleb hovered, switching masks with every breath. First it was anger. "You're ruining my life." Then it was pleading. "Brielle, please, just talk to me." Then it was soft crying. Real or performed, I couldn't tell anymore. "I miss you." I didn't respond, because I knew this pattern. I'd lived it for years in smaller forms. Public insult, private minimization, emotional whiplash. My confusion mistaken for forgiveness. When my trunk was almost full, Caleb stepped closer, voice trembling in a way that used to work on me. "I'm sorry," he said. I looked at him. It would have been so easy to want that sentence, to grab it like a life raft, pretend it could float us back to before. But I knew the truth. "You never said sorry," I replied quietly. "You said it was a joke. You said I was overreacting. That's not an apology. That's you trying to make me doubt what I heard." "I'm saying it now," he whispered. Too late. I closed the trunk. As I walked to my car, the tall officer stopped me gently. He kept his voice low. "Good for you," he said. I blinked, surprised. He shrugged, like he hated that he had to say it at all. Nobody deserves that treatment. I got in my car and drove away with my belongings in trash bags and something new in my chest, an unfamiliar steadiness. That steadiness didn't last long. The next day, my gym membership didn't scan. The front desk girl frowned. "It says your membership is canceled." I stared at her. "Canceled? By who?" She clicked around. Looks like you called yesterday." "I didn't," I said, voice flat. Her expression changed, confusion turning to sympathy. "The person had all your info." I felt my pulse spike. "Reinstate it and add password protection." Within minutes, it was restored, and I chose a password Caleb would never guess, something he'd mocked me for loving. The name of my childhood dog. Then my car insurance company called. "Ms. Kensington," the representative said, "we received a request to cancel your policy." I closed my eyes. Same trick, same poison. "He's impersonating me," I said, and my voice finally cracked just a little, not from fear, but from the absurdity of it. "That's my husband. We're divorcing." The representative immediately shifted tone. "We can add additional security measures and a verbal password." "Yes," I said, "do it on everything." Over the next week, I locked down my entire life like I was preparing for war. Every subscription, every service, every account. Security questions changed. two-factor authentication, fraud alerts, password managers. Because Caleb wasn't just trying to punish me. He was trying to make my world inconvenient enough that I'd come back just to stop the chaos. And the most terrifying part? It might have worked if I hadn't already tasted the peace of leaving. My lawyer loved the evidence. She was almost cheerful when she called. "He's destroying his own case," she said, "and he doesn't even realize it." I stared at my laptop screen, the growing folder labeled Caleb. Knowledge is power. "He's not done," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "No," she agreed, "he's not." And I was right, because a few days later, my lawyer called again, voice sharper than before. "Brielle," she said, "we have a court date." "For what?" "He filed for emergency relief." My stomach tightened. "Relief from what?" She exhaled. "He's claiming you're financially controlling him, that you cut him off, that you're unstable." For a second, my vision blurred, not because I believed it, because I suddenly understood what Caleb was doing. He wasn't just trying to get me back. He was trying to make sure that if he couldn't have me, he could at least own the story of why I left. And somewhere, in this back of my mind, I saw the flash of a name I'd noticed once at dinner in a notification glow. Someone reacting too quickly, too eagerly to his drama. A woman from his past. A woman who loved an audience. A woman who might be whispering in his ear that the best defense was to make me look like the villain. I sat very still in my beige corporate apartment, hands folded in my lap like I was holding myself together with sheer will. Then I opened a new document on my laptop. I titled it Timeline, and I started writing everything down. Because if Caleb wanted a war, fine. But he wasn't going to win it with a joke. Courtrooms have a smell. Old paper, cold coffee, anxiety that's been recycled through too many lives to count. I sat on a wooden bench outside Department C, spine straight, hands folded, listening to my name echo in my head like it didn't belong to me anymore. Brielle Kensington, v. Caleb Kensington. It looked so clean on paper, so neutral, like the word verses didn't carry teeth. Caleb arrived late. Of course he did. He swept in like he was late for a meeting he never intended to respect, jaw tight, shoulders squared, flanked by a man in a suit that looked new but already uncomfortable, his lawyer. The guy had the posture of someone who'd been sold half a story and was about to discover the rest. Caleb didn't look at me. That was new. When the clerk called our case, we stood. The judge, a woman with silver hair and a voice that didn't waste syllables, peered down at us like she'd already made up her mind and was daring us to change it. "Counsel," she said, nodding to Caleb's lawyer. "You may begin." The lawyer stood, smoothed his jacket. "Your Honor, while the marital residence is technically in my client's wife's name, my client has resided there for 5 years. He has equity through—" "Living somewhere?" the judge interrupted sharply. "Does not create ownership." The lawyer blinked. My lawyer didn't blink at all. She stood calmly. "Your Honor, the property was purchased by my client 2 years before the marriage. The deed, mortgage, taxes, and insurance are solely in her name." She slid documents forward like she was laying down cards in a game she'd already won. "Additionally," she continued, "since separation, Mr. Kensington has engaged in a pattern of harassment." Caleb shifted in his seat. My lawyer didn't look at him. She laid it all out. The fraudulent bank alert, the lock change, the police report, the attempted account cancellations, the photos of my belongings in garbage bags. Each piece landed with a quiet thud that felt louder than any shouting. The judge's eyes narrowed as she flipped through the pages. She looked up at Caleb. "Did you change the locks on a house you do not own?" Caleb stood quickly. "Your Honor, she left me. I was protecting myself." "By locking the owner out of her own property?" the judge asked. "She abandoned the marriage over a joke," he snapped, frustration cracking through the practiced victim tone. "I was upset." The judge's gaze sharpened. "A joke," she repeated slowly, "where you called your wife broken and useless in front of multiple witnesses." Caleb's mouth opened, closed, silence. "And then," the judge continued, voice steady but unforgiving, "you filed false fraud claims. You attempted to cancel her services. You removed her belongings and placed them in trash bags." He swallowed. "I was emotional." "Being emotional," she said flatly, "does not give you the right to harass someone." She turned back to the paperwork. "Motion granted," she said. "Exclusive possession to Ms. Kensington." "Mr. Kensington, you have 2 weeks to vacate the property. If you are not out by then, the sheriff will remove you." The words hung in the air like a verdict and a warning. Caleb collapsed into his chair like the bones had drained out of him. Then he started crying. Not quiet crying, not restrained tears. Loud, ugly sobbing. Hands over his face. shaking shoulders, the kind of display meant to make everyone uncomfortable enough to rescue him. "Where am I supposed to go?" he wailed. The judge didn't flinch. "That," she said, "is not this court's concern. You should have considered that before your behavior." I didn't look at him when court adjourned. Outside, the hallway buzzed with low conversations, footsteps, life moving forward for everyone else. Then a shadow crossed my path. "Are you serious?" a voice hissed. I turned. Dylan, Caleb's brother, red-faced, furious, like he'd been storing this anger for me personally. "You're really throwing him out?" he demanded. "After everything he's done for you?" I met his eyes. "What did he do for me?" I asked calmly. Dylan scoffed. "He supported you. He was there." "How?" I asked. He opened his mouth, closed it. "Tell me exactly how he supported me," I continued. "Because I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, the groceries, his car payment. My career paid for our life." Dylan stared at the floor. "Yeah," I said softly. "That's what I thought." "He has nowhere to go," Dylan muttered weakly. "Then he can stay with you," I replied. His head snapped up. "I don't have space." I shrugged. "Not my problem." I walked away before he could respond. 2 weeks later, eviction day came. I didn't go inside. I stayed in my car across the street, hands on the wheel, watching the house that had once been my compromise and was about to become mine again. The sheriff knocked. Caleb opened the door. I saw his face go pale from where I sat. "Mr. Kensington," the sheriff said, voice firm but not unkind, "you have 2 hours to gather your belongings and leave." "This is my home," Caleb shouted. The sheriff handed him the order. "According to this deed and court order, no, it's not. You're trespassing." That word, trespassing, hit him harder than anything else. His mother pulled up 10 minutes later in a moving truck. I felt something strange then, not satisfaction, not revenge. Relief. Someone else finally taking responsibility for him. It took 3 trips to load everything. I watched quietly, making sure nothing escalated. When they finished, I waited another 10 minutes, then drove over. The house felt different. Empty, but lighter. I changed the locks again, called a security company, installed cameras on every entrance, front door, back door, garage, driveway. I wasn't paranoid. I was done being surprised. A week later, my lawyer called, laughing. Actually laughing. "You're going to love this," she said. "What now?" I asked. He filed for spousal support. I closed my eyes. "On what grounds?" "He's claiming he sacrificed his career for the marriage." I let out a single incredulous breath. Court came again. This time, the judge barely needed an hour. My pay stubs, the bills, his work history, 6 part-time retail jobs in 5 years, all by choice. Never more than 25 hours a week. His lawyer tried once. "Your Honor, my client supported the household." "Supported how?" the judge asked. Silence. "He made $16,000 last year," the judge continued, reviewing documents. "She made over 90. She paid for everything." Caleb snapped. "You're all against me," he shouted. "She's lying." The judge's voice dropped to ice. "Compose yourself, Mr. Kensington." He didn't. Security escorted him out while he screamed about injustice. His lawyer didn't even look back. The next day, my lawyer called again. "He withdrew from the case," she said. Smart move. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Caleb got nothing. No spousal support, no claim to the house, no money. The judge's final words stayed with me. "I see no evidence supporting your claims. I do see a pattern of entitlement and harassment. Divorce granted." Caleb tried to appeal. Filed it himself. Denied in record time. I heard later he moved in with his mother, got a full-time job for the first time in years. Told anyone who'd listen that I stole his home. One mutual friend finally corrected him. "She didn't steal anything," he said. "You lost it." I redecorated the house. New furniture, new paint, new locks, new air. Work noticed the change before I did. "You seem lighter," my boss said one afternoon. "More focused." I smiled. I started dating again, slowly, carefully. Respect felt strange at first, quiet, unremarkable, not performative. It took me a while to stop waiting for the punchline. The restaurant where it all began? I drove past it one evening. Didn't feel a thing. It was just a building. Just the place where I decided I was worth more than being someone's joke. The funny thing about endings is that they don't arrive with music. They show up on ordinary days, tucked inside moments so small you almost miss them. 3 months after the divorce papers were stamped and sealed, I was sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by half-assembled furniture and paint samples, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it longer than I should have. Curiosity isn't weakness, I told myself. It's just information. I answered. "You destroyed his life." The voice was sharp, familiar. Dylan's wife, calling from a number I hadn't blocked yet. I leaned back against the wall, letting the cool paint seep through my shirt. I didn't destroy anything, I said calmly. I left. You threw him out, she snapped. He has nothing. He had nothing because he contributed nothing, I replied, and because actions have consequences. There was a pause, then quieter, defensive. He's been saying you controlled all the money. I almost laughed. I paid for everything, I said. That's not control. That's support he took for granted. Silence again. Tell him, I added, that I'm done talking about this. I hung up and blocked the number without ceremony. That night, I slept deeply, the way you do when your nervous system finally accepts that the danger has passed. A week later, I heard more through the grapevine. Caleb was still telling his version of the story, how I'd abandoned him, how I'd turned cold, how I'd used money to punish him. He said it at bars, at work, to anyone who would listen long enough to feel sorry for him. But something had changed. People weren't nodding anymore. One of our old mutual friends, Jonah, ran into him at a party and finally said what everyone else had been thinking. She didn't steal your house, Jonah told him. It was hers. She didn't ruin your life. She stopped letting you ruin hers. Apparently, Caleb just stared at his drink and said, "Everyone's against me." That sentence followed him like a shadow. People stopped inviting him out after that. A few days later, Elise, the woman who'd been sitting across from me at that dinner, sent me a message. "I owe you an apology," she wrote. "We all knew he was treating you badly. We just assumed you were okay with it. Seeing how he acted after you left, I'm sorry we didn't speak up." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I replied, "Not your job to fix my marriage, but thank you." Because it wasn't their silence that kept me there. It was mine. Life settled into something solid after that. The house stopped feeling like a battleground and started feeling like a home. I changed everything, furniture, colors, even the way sunlight moved through the rooms now that nothing heavy was blocking it. I installed cameras, not because I was afraid, but because peace deserves protection. Work thrived. I got promoted 2 months later. My boss pulled me aside and said, "Whatever changed in your life, keep it." I knew exactly what had changed. I stopped accepting disrespect as the cost of love. I met someone new at a bookstore, of all places. We reached for the same novel, laughed about it, ended up getting coffee. Nothing dramatic, no fireworks, no performance. Just conversation, eye contact, respect. On our third coffee, he asked about my ex. I gave him the short version. He winced. He sounds exhausting. He was, I said. "What made you finally leave?" he asked gently. I didn't have to think. He called me broken in front of people like I was something he could replace, I said, and I realized I'd been accepting disrespect for so long, I forgot I had a choice. He nodded slowly. "Good for you." And that was it. No judgment, no advice, no ego. Basic decency shouldn't feel revolutionary, but when you've lived without it, it does. A few months later, my mom asked me something I'd been bracing for. "Do you regret the marriage?" she asked. "Do you wish you'd tried harder?" I shook my head. "I stayed because I thought love meant endurance," I said. "I left because I learned love doesn't require humiliation." She squeezed my hand. As for Caleb, last I heard, he was still living with his mother. Still working, still bitter, still telling anyone who would listen that I ruined his life. One of his old friends finally shut him down. "You didn't lose your wife because of a joke," he told him. "You lost her because you kept making her the joke." Caleb didn't have a comeback for that. I drove past the restaurant again recently, the Italian place with the corner table and the bad wine. Didn't even slow down. It's funny how places lose their power once you stop bleeding in them. Walking out that night wasn't dramatic. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't throw a glass of wine in anyone's face. I just stood up, told him exactly what his words meant, and left. And that was the moment everything changed. He wanted a new wife. I gave him exactly what he asked for, by becoming someone who would never let herself be spoken to like that again.